To respond to Berlin's housing crisis, a radically new approach to how we live together is needed. Learning from the Russian constructivists, we answer the following question: can housing be a form of societal reform? The constructivist social condenser collectivized reproductive functions and explored more efficient communal living typologies. By emancipating the woman from domestic labor, housing should reform society. Some members of the constructivist movement universalized the needs of the people, designing prison-esque housing schemes. But Moshe Ginsburg, the architect of the Narkenfin social condenser, had a different vision. Mixed typologies with small private apartments, countered by larger communal areas, would make the collective lifestyle an individual choice. He believed it could become the basis for personal development and undo class differences. Narkenfin failed. The communal functions were not built, so the apartments became cramped and isolated. Its unrealized reformist potential left behind a building with a static and functionalist approach to dwelling that failed to meet the changing needs of its residents. But what should housing as a societal reform look like today? A community of 200 people come to Tempelhof to partake in a radical housing experiment. They are a representative cut through the current household structures of Berlin, with more weight given to those with increased risk of poverty. Their faces are generated by a neural network from a large reference database. They are a thought model for representative, speculative design. They are not real. From our model community, we can observe patterns. Small households form a majority of cases while using more space per person. The Technonoma produces space through movement and difference. In Berlin's KK Club, the space becomes embodied by them every weekend. Despite the location of the club changing over the years, there is a sense of permanence, less through the architecture, more through a repetitive spatio-temporal event occurring every weekend. Tempelhof Condenser can learn from KitKat by becoming embodied by its residents and visitors. By designing for change and difference, it overcomes the functionalist shortcomings of constructivism. Despite designing for impermanence, an updated social condenser must also understand that complete freedom without regulation cannot reform the existing inequalities in Berlin society. As such, we propose spatially specific typologies and collective functions with the aim of creating parity through equal access to dwelling space and infrastructure. Despite this, the residents' usage patterns and communal areas must be ambiguous, so as to remain open to change. The Tempelhof condenser fluctuates between these two contradictions, between providing structure and remaining indeterminate. Berlin's housing market is polarized between an affluent new middle class and lower socioeconomic groups. The techno-nomad, a member of this new middle class, engages in identity-constituting work. Their reproductive labor shifts away from the domestic sphere, offloaded instead onto those on a lower pay scale. An updated social condenser takes an intersectional approach to emancipation, expanding the first-wave feminist ideals of Narkenfin to include all marginalized groups. The experimental community rethinks all types of labor by bringing them back into the domestic sphere. Upon becoming a resident, every member should sign a contract, binding them to perform a certain number of days of reproductive labor each year. They become a member of the cooperative, Tempelhof Condenser. Tempelhof is no longer a static building, but is reimagined as a Deleuzian desire machine. As an active subject, it desires to make kin amongst all residents and provide equal access to housing and infrastructure. It is governed democratically by the residents and is thus continually reevaluated. The 200 individuals and the building are not separate, but constitute each other's identities in relation to one another through their differences. The social condenser is thought of on the macro scale of the city, bringing together different gradients of public and private differentiation. The residents, collective functions, and the public come together in the main hall, where a ramp connects the city and the field and is lined by public uses. The dwelling and collective infrastructure is inserted into the existing building. Providing for the different needs of the community requires a typological approach where we explore specific solutions through case studies. Each citizen lives within a specific household, which varies in size and communal living form. Types F1 and K1 profit from economies of scale through their repetition. They house the majority of residents, single and two-person households. Many households, however, form exceptions, resulting from spatial specificities and variations within the airport building structure. More communal dwelling forms are also created. Here, larger groups of individuals can cohabit. The communal spaces are designed as fluid environments. New forms of furniture enable interactions. Their precise usage is produced by the inhabitants. The event space provides changing leisure activities. A morphing typology can enable different functions. As with the Kika Club, the space becomes embodied through the users. Tempelhof is no longer an airport building. The building is the 200 people.